To be alive, the odds against you or being this world the way it is are astronomical. And so confronting your mortality makes you aware of how marvelous and wonderful and incredible it is to actually be alive. And to me, that is sublime. You know, we could argue about everything, we humans. Everybody, you know, politically argues, you know, the sky is this color, it's that color, etc. We can't agree on anything. But there's one reality that not a single person can deny, and that is that we're all going to die. It's the one basic reality that is staring each and every one of us in the face. There is no escape. As Jim Morrison said, no one here gets out alive. And so the idea is, here's this one basic fundamental reality that every single one of us share, from presidents to homeless people, and yet nobody talks about it. You never have any kind of philosophical discussion about how do we deal with our mortality, not how do we deal with dying itself, not how we deal with the pain of it, but how we deal with the thought of it every day, that it could happen tomorrow. You know, there are books written about it, obviously the Stoics and other philosophers, but as a culture, we don't discuss it. And to me, that's insane, right? It used to be a huge part of culture and religion, is how to deal with the concept of mortality, is, you know, what religion and culture was about for so many centuries, right? And it's not easy dealing with it because the thought of it is obviously unpleasant. The thought of it is, you know, I mean, I think about it all the time in my meditation. It's deeply disturbing. But on the other hand, confronting it, instead of turning your back on it and ignoring it and repressing it, which is what we do in our culture, you know, we don't see people dying. They all die on these hospitals far away from our view. We don't see the animals that we eat being slaughtered. That's all happens away from our view. You know, and in our movies, we see people being gunned down like left, right, and center, but it's like a cartoon. It's not real. It's not personal. So we're in massive denial and massive repression mode. And it didn't used to be that way, because 300 years ago, you were seeing dead people all the time. Your family, your relatives, they would die in the house. You would see dead people in the street. You would see the animals being killed. You'd see the blood spurting out of them. All right? And so the idea is, it shouldn't be this element of fear. It should be actually something you should turn your back around and look at it squarely in the eye. And it's not to be gloomy or morbid, but that confronting your mortality, looking it square in the face instead of turning your back, is incredibly liberating for various reasons. It makes it clear to you that your days are numbered. It means I better have a sense of urgency and desperation to get things done in my life. I better have the requisite energy. I better appreciate the people who are around me, my loved ones, because they could be gone tomorrow. It gives a certain intensity to life, confronting this reality, okay? So I wrote that chapter last chapter in May of 2018. And combined with it was this idea of the sublime, which is, in looking at our mortality, you're confronting the nature of life itself, and you're becoming aware of how insane it is to just be alive. To be alive, the odds against you or being this world the way it is are astronomical. And so confronting your mortality makes you aware of how marvelous and wonderful and incredible it is to actually be alive. And to me, that is sublime. Anyway, I wrote that in May of 2018, the last chapter, and I was exhausted. It was a really hard book to write, but I'd done it. And now I was kind of, you know, getting ready for the publicity, etc. And then August 17 of 2018, literally 3 months afterwards, I suffered a stroke. And in that stroke, my girlfriend then, Anna, she basically saved my life. I was driving my car. It happened. She forced me to pull over, and I came this close to dying. I would have probably gotten in a terrible accident, and B, I wouldn't have gotten attention in time, and either I would have died or I would have had severe brain damage, and I would not be here talking to you right now. It was very fortunate. Everything kind of fell into place or a hospital was nearby, the ambulance came, they were able to put something in my neck to stop the blood clot that had stopped the flow of blood to my brain. Everything worked out so that I ended up not only surviving, but with my cognitive abilities intact as far as I know. And so I'm thinking, this chapter that I had just written about confronting your mortality was really ironic, because now I actually had to go through the experience. Whereas before it was this kind of intellectual exercise about the importance of being aware of your mortality. Now it was very real. Now it was visceral. I had been in a coma for a while. I had this, I wouldn't say a near-death experience, but these kind of strange sensations that invaded my body. Sensations that I still have to this day. Feelings of like my bones kind of disintegrating as I'm sitting here. Anyway, I come out of the hospital and I have to deal with the fact that I'm alive, but I'm kind of in this feeble state. And everything I wrote about in the chapter was true. It changed my perspective at life. It gave me a totally altered view about what it means to be alive. And what I wrote about wasn't this weird, abstract, intellectual idea, academic idea about confronting your death. It is very, very, very real. And the power it contains is very, very, very real. You know, just sitting in my office and hearing the birds chirp in the morning and seeing the sun shine is to me like this experience, because I know it could have been taken away from me. I right now, as a person, might be dead. I wouldn't exist. And, you know, I think about that all the time. So what I wrote about is very true. It's not that I don't have difficult moments dealing with this situation, but my overall philosophy, my view of the fact of being alive is completely altered through this confrontation with death. And you don't have to go through a near-death experience to have this. That's the point of the chapter. You can mentally go through it. You can mentally meditate on your mortality. You can mentally imagine, like I used to do in my meditation, I still do, literally thinking about that last day of your life and what it means, and give it a kind of visceral reality. Give it something kind of physical, where it's not just something intellectual, it's something it's in your body and you feel it. It's not going to be as strong as a stroke or a near-death experience, but it'll have a tremendous amount of therapeutic value for you. There are ways where you can do this confrontation mentally without having to go through the physical experience itself. People have been writing about this for millennia, but it's very real and it's very powerful. And I deal with all of the aspects of what confronting your mortality can do, including with the fact that it can make you understand and feel more empathetic towards other people around you. I want you to, when you look at people, when you look at your friends, when you even look at your enemies, when you look at your parents, I want you to see their mortality in them, to actually feel it. And this will create a deeper, more profound connection with them, a greater sense of empathy. And the thing was, I had intended to write a book on the sublime because it's a concept very important to me. About 16 years ago, it was going to be what I wrote after the 33 Strategies of War. I had done the research, I was getting ready, I'd done a proposal, and then I got the 50 Cent book, which kind of took me off on a different route for one book, and then Mastery came up, and then Human Nature came up, and it kind of got pushed to the side, and I intended to come back to it. And now I am finally coming back to it. It's my next book. But the weird thing is, I had intended to write that book, as I said, 16 years ago, where I was going to go around the world having all of these insane experiences. I was going to swim with dolphins. I was going to go to Tierra del Fuego. I was going to climb mountains in Afghanistan, you know, obviously without the war or whatever, or somewhere else. And I was going to have these sublime moments, and I was going to write about them. And here I am now. I can barely walk up the street where I live. I can barely go 3 or 4 blocks. I can't hike. I can't swim with dolphins. I can't go climb mountains. I had to change the book. I'm still writing about it. But what happened is, sitting in my chair, in my office, in my house here in Los Angeles, writing about it and thinking about it has had this incredible impact for me, incredible therapeutic value. I am immersed in sublime thoughts and moments and ideas every day, and I don't have to get out of my chair. So if I had written that book 16 years ago, flying off to Argentina, etc., I think some people would go, yeah, Robert, that's interesting, but you know, I can't afford that. What does it have to do with my life? You're kind of this privileged guy who could spend all that money, blah, blah, blah. And now that's not the book that I'm going to write, but I think everybody can relate to it, because you could be slinging hamburgers at McDonald's and coming back to a studio apartment that's not what you want, etc. But this book will show you that no matter what your circumstances are, you are alive right now. It's unbelievable stroke of luck that you are who you are, that the world is the way it is. And it's a book that will alter your whole way of thinking without you ever having to travel anywhere or do anything. And so, in a funny way, it's almost like fate happened for a reason. I know that we don't like to think about like that anymore in this world because we're so modern and sophisticated. And fate, that's something that only stupid, superstitious people believe in. But the fact that I came this close to dying, but didn't die and had my brain intact, it feels kind of weird. Could it have happened for a purpose? Probably not, but I like to think it did, you know? And the fact that I have to write a book now in these altered circumstances probably didn't happen for a purpose, but I like to think that it did. I like to think that it was a matter of fate, that all of these things came together, and this is going to be the book that happens. And I think more and more and more of the problem that a lot of us face is we don't have these kind of thoughts that sort of transport us beyond our banal day-to-day realities. We need more of these connection to something larger than ourselves.